someone says to you, "Oh, you're into crypto," and you say, "No, I'm not into crypto. I'm into Bitcoin."
You definitely had a lot of conversations with Michael Saylor and his team. If Bitcoin price goes down, strategy is not going to make it.
I don't think Saylor is going to get liquidated. I think Bitcoin price needs to go down like significantly. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars that's sitting on the sidelines. Maybe over $1 billion.
I'm super happy to be joined by George Mekhail, and he is the managing director from Bitcoin for Corporations. George, man, thanks for making the time today. Could you tell us a bit about yourself? Like, how would you describe what you actually do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Scott, thanks so much for having me on. Excited for this conversation. Yeah, so like you said, my name is George Mekhail. I'm the managing director at Bitcoin for Corporations, which is a ecosystem, executive network of Bitcoin companies. Our mission is to accelerate corporate Bitcoin adoption. So our day-to-day basically is coming alongside companies who want to adopt a Bitcoin strategy and seeing where we can support those efforts. So we do that in a number of different ways. Through membership, companies join, become a part of the ecosystem, and then we help them navigate kind of what their next steps are. I've been in Bitcoin since 2017. I've been working for BTC Inc. for coming up on my 5-year anniversary soon. Started in marketing and then led the Bitcoin magazine team for a season. Started Bitcoin for Corporations about 1.5 years ago. We partnered with Strategy. We started noticing that there's, companies popping up all over that are attempting to replicate Michael Saylor's approach. And so we approached them and said, what if we kind of open source the playbook and help equip the companies who are looking to be the next, Michael Saylor of their region. And so they were excited about that proposition. And we joined forces, and we are basically under contract for the next 5 years to keep building this based on the success of the first 1.5 years.
That sounds amazing. It's very crazy, like how the market has shifted like dramatically, from the previous all-time high to where we are right now. How do you feel about the changes that you've made all these years? I know you went from a career from banking and mortgage to where you are right now as a managing director, but you were also in the marketing field, right? How did that all happen?
Yeah, so it's a fun story. My path to get here was not a linear path, but certainly I think the experience in the mortgage business definitely informed. That was one step, and then the next step was a career in ministry. So I'll kind of start at the beginning. In 2008, I was in the mortgage business. I worked for Wells Fargo. I led a mortgage office in Tukwila, Washington. And we kind of had front row seats to the great financial crisis, seeing what I saw based on kind of my vantage point, right? So I had clients that were getting denied for mortgages that maybe should have been approved. And I had clients getting approved for mortgages that should have been denied. And it all kind of felt sort of random and arbitrary. And at the same time, the banks that were being irresponsible with the ways that they were writing loans were getting bailed out by the government. And that was kind of my first, I don't know if it was an aha moment, but it was more like I started asking a lot of questions, right? Like, why am I working so hard to earn it, right? And that kind of became the fundamental question. It's like, what is money? I'd never, really asked that question up until that point in my life, which I think is telling unto itself, right? Is that we don't ask that question. We don't really ask, like, where does money come from? Why is it valuable?
How do you think about the narratives back in the days when you start joining the Bitcoin world compared to where you are right now, especially when people are focusing on institutional adoptions?
Yeah, I think institutional adoption is definitely a big one that's emerged. I think, like I said, the crypto versus Bitcoin narrative, I think has evolved. What I mean is, I still think it's very, very important when we're talking to people about Bitcoin that they understand that there is a clear difference between Bitcoin and everything else. Like, hands down, critical thing that is still very misunderstood. And I hate to say this, but I think that we're losing the culture war. I'll say it that way. Like Bitcoin, that particular narrative around someone says to you, "Oh, you're into crypto," and you say, "No, I'm not into crypto. I'm into Bitcoin." You didn't really do anything with that statement, right? They still see you as a crypto bro. Sorry, you're still lumped in with that group. If we want to actually make progress and not lose people before we even start, I think that hodling is very important. I think it's a very important thing to instill into people early on, especially because it restores people's ability to think about money differently and to think about savings. I think it's okay to say, like, hey, If you need to sell a little bit for a new car purchase for your family or a down payment on a house or whatever, it's money, right? Like, what's the point of having money if you're not ever going to use it? The counter argument would be like, oh, well, if you're sidelined and then Bitcoin runs up and now your stack is smaller. Well, yeah, guess what? That's how money works sometimes, is that you used to have some and now you don't, but hopefully, you used it for something that is improving your life. It's that leads us to kind of the corporate adoption piece. And like I said, the copycats are here, and there's more coming online every single day. And I think this is something that Bitcoiners should be excited about. I think that number go up is the number one best marketing tool for Bitcoin. Like, if we care about adoption, we want to see this be the global reserve currency. If we have those aspirations, then we need corporations to adopt, and we need number to go up.
You definitely had a lot of conversations with Michael Saylor and his team, right? There has been a circulating arguments about what Michael Saylor has been doing with strategy. People are skeptical about the way strategy approaches Bitcoin, the leverage and all stuff. Like, if Bitcoin price goes down, strategy is not going to make it. What's your take on that? Would you think that people are just having wrong assumption or understanding about what Michael Saylor actually wants to do?
As many conversations I've had with Saylor and his team, and as much as I believe personally that they're committed to their strategy and that they're doing all the things that they are saying that they're going to do, and that, in fact, I would go as far as to say that they're contributing to building a better world, a better economic reality for people with some of the products that they're putting out, the way that they're thinking about reimagining the entire banking system, right? When you can put a product on the market that offers everyday people 11.5% on their excess capital, like, no bank is offering that. So that is exact direct affront to the banking cartel. People kind of overthink this a little bit in my mind, because what's great about Bitcoin is that there are no bailouts. So I don't think Saylor is going to get liquidated. I think Bitcoin price needs to go down like significantly, even past a 50% drop. Like, I don't know what the exact number is, but I don't think it's going to hit the number that people are worried about. And even if it does, Bitcoin's a hard teacher. And if they have to start selling Bitcoin and that isn't a little bit of an unwind, is that bad for Bitcoin? It might be bad for short-term price action, but like, Bitcoin's going to be fine, right? And so on one hand, you're saying, I am worried that Saylor's going to get liquidated. And on the other hand, you're saying, I don't want institutions to buy. And I think you kind of have to choose like which one it is, like, because you can't have it both ways. It's either you believe in Bitcoin and that it's, Saylor can't break it one way or the other, or you don't, and your talking points are kind of inconsistent.
On the flip side, what do you think that Michael Saylor can do better, at least in the short run?
If I had to critique something, I think number one, they're extremely transparent. So if I wanted one thing out of a company like Strategy, it would be full transparency. I know they've been criticized for kind of the proof of reserves piece, which would be like ultimate transparency. The counter arguments against that would be that there's just it's more complicated than that. We're not talking about a personal wallet or a small business that's not publicly traded that has to think about SEC disclosures and every time they make a small move of assets, and how one of the best things about Bitcoin is that it's a public ledger. It also doesn't really integrate well into our legacy financial system to where they could remain compliant in a way that's reliable while offering the market proof of reserve. So it's one of those things where Bitcoin's incentive structure is so perfectly designed that they're going to do what's best for their 800,000 Bitcoin that they have on their balance sheet, right? I'm not trusting you really, but I'm trusting the incentive structure of Bitcoin that it's going to inform your behavior. And that's what I'm seeing out of them. It's hard to point to one thing and say like, oh, you should do this differently, because I think they're executing pretty well.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We were talking about don't trust verify. Would you say that you are the type of person who are more like looking into how one thing works, in terms of its structure, its mechanism, than looking at what a person does or says?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly true. Like if I didn't believe in Bitcoin's incentive structure to kind of self-correct people's behaviors, then I wouldn't have as much belief in Bitcoin as I do, right? It's like I told you my story. That's one of the main reasons I'm here is the incentives are so well designed that I don't need to trust anybody. You're either going to be humble with your approach to Bitcoin, or Bitcoin is going to humble you.
True.
And I think that's what we've seen. And so you don't need to trust anyone. That's the whole point. I think people pay too much attention, honestly, to what Saylor's doing, and they don't worry enough about what they're doing.
You mentioned like a year ago, there were only roughly 90 public companies who were holding Bitcoin, but now we have over like 160. Here's a very interesting question. Would you think that the number will go down a little bit by filtering out some people calling them, copycats? Or would you think the number will keep go up like later this year to maybe 300, 400 public companies?
Yeah, so I think the adoption curve will follow the Bitcoin price, just like, conference ticket sales or sales in general. If you're a Bitcoin company and you have a Bitcoin product or service, like if you're Coinbase, the one of the stats that I like to track is where it is on the downloads list in the App Store, right? And it follows almost a perfect trend of price, right? As price goes up, Coinbase climbs the most popular apps charts. I think that we'll see something similar with Bitcoin companies. Some will not make it. Some have already not made it. It hasn't been a huge number, but some have quietly pivoted. Some have reconsidered their strategy for one reason or another. Some got over levered and had to sell Bitcoin and to cover their positions. And so we're going to see some shuffling around, I think, and we'll probably see a pullback in how quickly adoption is happening. But then I think as the bear market wraps up, then that's going to start climbing again. I think the other interesting thing to watch is what is happening with mining companies. A lot of mining companies right now pivoting to AI and selling their Bitcoin in order to invest in AI infrastructure. And so, we count those as institutions that hold Bitcoin. So if they sell all their Bitcoin and focus fully on AI, then that removes numbers from the list as well. So, but yeah, I think the short answer is that it's going to follow the price of Bitcoin, just like everything else.
I know you've been working closely with corporations who are trying to or are already like holding Bitcoin. What do you think would be the reason of some companies pivoting away from Bitcoin and joining forces with you guys?
Pivoting away from Bitcoin, like they have a strategy. So yeah, I think I mentioned the two that I've seen most visibly have been, core business is taking. I think I used this example at Strategy World actually. Frenetics, one of our member companies, healthcare supplements company, partnered with David Beckham. I think David Beckham's on their board. Great set of leaders. Got to know their executive team, and they were buying 1 Bitcoin a day for a while there. Their core business started really taking off. Their shareholders demanded more focus and attention into growing their core business. And so they announced recently that they were going to pause the accumulation of Bitcoin. So they didn't sell their Bitcoin. They didn't say they don't like Bitcoin anymore. They just said that, right now they're going to kind of take a beat and focus on their core business. So I think that's one example of companies that are going to kind of reconsider how they're approaching it. I think, the mining shift to AI is another one. I think that there are certainly companies that started down the road and then got spooked because, they had assumptions as to what, just making the announcement and saying, hey, we're going to add Bitcoin to our balance sheet. They had assumptions that would immediately make their stock price go up. It didn't immediately go up. Their panic and their lack of conviction showed, and they immediately retreated. And so I think that there was kind of the treasury mania phase last year that some people tried to kind of go down this road and announce a Bitcoin strategy, but really didn't have the conviction and weren't really doing it for the right reasons. They didn't understand Bitcoin, right? So if you don't have those things, there's a good chance you're not going to make it, in my opinion.
Let's move on to Bitcoin conference. What's new at this year's Bitcoin conference? Like, what are you currently working on, and how's it going so far?
Yeah, so it's coming up quick. I think we're just a few weeks now, a couple weeks away, and we're in that crunch time. We're in that FOMO phase. Every time we get inside the 30 days before a conference window, that's really when FOMO starts to hit, and it's FOMO across the board, right? Like we see an uptick in ticket sales, hotel bookings, even speakers that are like, oh, I want to speak, So we're definitely in that phase right now. So there's a lot of exciting announcements that we've been making and that we're going to continue to make over the coming weeks. Certainly a bear market kind of backdrop and sentiment, but we're still expecting over 20,000 people to attend. So it's not going to feel like a bear market when we're there. So that's kind of our big undertaking at the conference. And then it's just going to be great to hang out with Bitcoiners and meet some of the companies, hear some of the announcements. I think that's one of my favorite parts about the conference is that companies use this as an opportunity to drop some of their major announcements for the year. So expect to see some exciting product releases and new companies coming online.
What would be the only one thing that you want to say say to people who are listening to this conversation, whether they're retail investors, project founders, or business owners who haven't really touched Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that now is an interesting time in Bitcoin because on one hand, you have sentiment that's probably one of the lowest it's ever been, one of the worst sentiments that we've seen. If you're on Bitcoin Twitter, you kind of spend time kind of hearing from Bitcoiners. They're not stoked about where price is, and there's a lot to be bearish about. But I think that's more noise than what the real signal is, which, I have the opportunity to speak with corporate executives, CEOs of companies who they're kind of chomping at the bit, right? They're like, their mouth is foaming with the opportunity to buy in at this price. And so, that should be a signal that when institutions are not scared and they're doubling down and they're finding ways. For example, there's companies who spent the last 6 to 8 months fundraising and preparing to IPO, and they haven't even deployed the capital yet to acquire the Bitcoin that they're earmarked to acquire. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars that's sitting on the sidelines, maybe over $1 billion sitting on the sideline that's just waiting for regulatory hurdles or some other obstacle, and then you're going to see new companies come online. So I think that's the real signal. I think that it's the blood on the streets, famous quote, buy when there's fear. Yeah, it's not a time to panic, especially if this is your first cycle. I think that it's easy to panic because you've never seen this before. For me, now that this is my third cycle, I think, third full cycle, I've kind of gotten numb to it. I'm kind of like, 50% drawdown, no big deal, right? I just want to encourage people who haven't been here for that long that this is what Bitcoin does. This is kind of par for the course, and these are some of the best opportunities. Is when everyone else is afraid, you're getting more aggressive with your DCAs or your auto buys every time you get paid. This is an accumulation game first and foremost. Just be encouraged and don't let the sentiment bring you down.